Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date and help the channel grow. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And now, on with the show. You are listening to the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion with the one and only Gray. Greetings, opinion nerds. It is I, the one they call Gray, and today I'm asking questions about myself with director Guillermo Del Toro's Pinocchio on this random act of opinion coming up right now. You know, any movie can be a journey inside your own mind, opinion nerds. Everyone loves movies. Whether you're diving deep into the well of obscure avant-garde cinema or just looking for something comfortable to put on in the background, there probably isn't a person alive that doesn't enjoy movies on some level. Many would say they are, at least for now, the highest form of artistic expression humanity has achieved. Whether it be to provoke or inform or entertain, movies combine some aspect of just about every art form we have at our disposal. Every movie we watch, no matter how simple or inarticulate or meaningless we think it is an opportunity to either learn something new, to have a new experience, or to question something about the world or even just about ourselves while being transported emotionally and psychologically, often while experiencing some kind of physical reaction. If you give yourself over completely to a movie, it can really take you places in ways no other art form can, even if the place it takes you to is just a better understanding of your own perspective. In Pinocchio, a grief-stricken woodcarver during a time of war is given a magical gift when the wooden boy he's carved is brought to life. Directed by Guillermo Del Toro and Mark Gustafson from a screenplay by Del Toro and Patrick McHale, the film stars Ewan McGregor, David Bradley, Gregory Mann, Ron Perlman, Christoph Waltz, Cate Blanchett, and Tilda Swinton. Now, I cannot tell a lie, there will be some spoilers ahead. The narrative life of Pinocchio begins all the way back in 1883 when writer Carlo Collodi, disillusioned after covering Italian politics, turned to writing children's material as a way to express his own ideas and convictions. The character of Pinocchio was originally created as an unwieldy ragamuffin, a vehicle for Collodi to spin allegories about his view on how children should learn to behave, which positioned Pinocchio as a hero who learns the value of being a good and obedient child after originally envisioning the tale as a tragedy where the puppet boy's behavior results in his death. The Adventures of Pinocchio has gone on to become one of the most widely known and frequently adapted works of fiction, with the key element of an artificial person wishing to become real becoming one of the most used tropes in modern storytelling. Unless you're a Pinocchio scholar or have had an opportunity to speak with him on the subject, it's impossible to know exactly what sources Del Toro drew upon for his new adaptation. Drawing upon a number of elements present in the original stories, the writer-director shifts the narrative to Mussolini's Italy during the Allied bombings of the 1940s. Del Toro and McHale weave many of Collodi's allegorical elements together with new thematic explorations to create a unique version of Pinocchio that draws more from the original adventures than the 1940 animated film from Walt Disney Studios. The narrative places the magical intrusion of the wooden boy against the backdrop of a real world at a time of war, covering several themes including grief, fatherhood, and the importance of obedience. Del Toro and Gustafson present their tale using puppets and stop-motion animation to create a film that avoids the desire for long, fast-paced takes and impossible camera angles you might get with CG, creating a much more traditional feeling experience. While it certainly would have been possible to make this film in live action, creating the Pinocchio character as convincingly as done here through a practical combination of animatronics and suited performers, the results would likely have been far more expensive than this film's $35 million budget without the same artistic effect. Stop-motion allows for a more stylized and visually coherent world that sets the audience's expectations such that they aren't trying to resolve the film's magical conceit with our perceived reality. It might not be something we always consider, but since we don't expect animation to adhere to the rules of our world, we don't, most of us anyway, think too much about it when those rules are broken. This allows the animation to be expressive in a way that we might not suffer so easily with human performers. There's often a call for those making animated films to hire actors who have made their careers doing voice work over hiring named talents or non-voice specific performers, but some of this misses the difference in the casting methodology between the groups. Voice-specific performers are generally hired for their ability to be flexible and provide many kinds of vocal approaches quickly, but the job of an actor is the same whether you're recording a voice or filming a full-body performance. So while a non-career voice actor may not be as flexible in creating unique vocalizations, the job of convincingly conveying the emotions of the scene and the qualities of the character are still the same. The difference is that, like any other role, the actor has to be appropriate for the character. To a certain extent, the audience has to extend the same suspension of disbelief they give to performers in live-action roles. You have to look past the fact that Brad Pitt will always be recognizable as Brad Pitt. That's the audience's job, and watching an animated film shouldn't change that. As it turns out, Pinocchio's cast turns in uniformly effective performances. Along with Bradley and McGregor, the film features Tim Blake Nelson, Bern Gorman, John Turturro, and Tom Kenny in supporting roles. Swinton and Blanchett bring their otherworldly tones to the angelic fairies, while McGregor narrates in exacting enunciations. Everyone brings the right amount of energy to their roles, most especially a scene-chewing Christoph Waltz. If the concern is that a cast of non-career voice actors will simply phone it in, those fears can be laid to rest. Del Toro has become known as a teller of fairy tales for grown-ups, but Pinocchio seems more geared towards children than adults. The director does bring some darker, perhaps even frightening elements to the film, but it doesn't seem to be too far beyond what exists in the original Collodi material. But Del Toro isn't attempting to create either a frightening and intense experience or one filled with insincere sentiment for the purpose of generating the feels. The film may be made for a younger audience, but it isn't talking down to them. There's a pretty clear division between which themes are meant to resonate with children and which ones for adults, and that might lead to some conflict of focus with some viewers. Everything is resolved in the end, but whether or not those resolutions are satisfying is up to the individual to decide. In my opinion, the resolutions don't feel natural, and that impacted my evaluation of the film as a piece of storytelling construction. However, it didn't negatively impact my feelings about it as a piece of filmmaking and a piece of artistic craftsmanship. I was charmed by the film and amazed by the detail in the puppet work. The work on display is astounding, and the performances are highly entertaining. Gregory Mann's exuberant singing on Everything Is New to Me has been bouncing around in my head for a couple of days now, but I'd be lying if I said I was entirely satisfied with the movie, though the reasons have nothing to do with the movie itself. The movie requires you to take some pretty big leaps in logic to let it do its thing, which sounds like a stupid thing to be concerned about when we're talking about a kid's movie, but like I said, my issues aren't the movie's fault. My family wasn't a Disney family, and by that I mean more than just the fact we weren't renters in the House of Mouse. My dad is an engineer. My mother studied psychology and behavioral therapy and went on to become a kind of scholar of world religions and metaphysics. I grew up watching action films, superhero cartoons, and science fiction. Lots of science fiction. My interior play spaces were filled with robots, aliens, and other machines of a scientific nature, imaginary things which had more of a realistic grounding. Some of this may also come from the fact that I wasn't raised as a person of faith. Sure, my parents engaged in the whole Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, Easter Bunny thing, but they allowed me to stop going to church when religion stopped making sense to me. They never encouraged me to just take things as a matter of faith, not things like that anyway. Long story short, I was not a fantasy and magic kid, and I certainly wasn't a fairy tales kid, and that had a very strong hand in shaping who I am today. It's not that I don't understand the construction of that kind of material or that I can't enjoy storytelling that follows it. My problem is I can't get out of my own head while watching it, and my own internal dialogue ends up being distracting. I'm holding nothing against the movie, but I do find myself on the off foot when dealing with material where the world has no definable rules. For example, when Pinocchio is born, he has a perfect grasp of language and an awareness of the world, but has an entire song where he asks what fairly common items around the house are and what you do with them. The narrative is clearly set in a world where real-ass magic exists, but that has nothing to do with the real-ass talking cricket that no one seems surprised about, despite the world's incredible lack of other talking non-human creatures. Thinking about the implications of these kinds of things is completely non-beneficial to the enjoyment of the film, yet here I am doing it anyways. Maybe it's because the movie is so clearly set in such a grounded world that the contrast between the elements becomes more stark than I'm comfortable with. I don't know. Maybe that's just an excuse for my literal mindedness. But this is something I have to face about myself as a film goer. It's not something I have to contemplate often because I don't watch a lot of kids' material. Generally, if I'm watching a movie and I feel like I'm being asked to overlook massive leaps in internal logic to allow it to work, I feel like I'm watching a poorly made film. But that's all a matter of intent. For instance, I recently watched Jacques Demy's long French title, which translates to The Most Important Event Since Man Walked on the Moon, about a phenomenon where cisgender men suddenly appear to become pregnant. There is no explanation for this, and it's all just treated as a thing that's happening, despite the fact that it's physiologically impossible on every level. But not only is this not really what the movie is about, it all turns out to be hooey in the film's world anyways. Even then, I was still distracted by my own tendency to ask questions the movie had no intention and no need of answering. All of this is contextual, though, and that's why, despite my need to cross all the T's and dot all the I's, I still enjoyed that film and Pinocchio very much. But this is what movies, any movies, can do if you let them. They give you a chance to look at things from a new perspective and an excuse to ask yourself questions or explore ideas you might not otherwise. Because of the experience I had with this film, I now have a new area of myself to explore, and who knows what might come of that. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Del Toro's Pinocchio may not end up being the richly layered piece of storytelling it aspires to be, but it is a fantastic piece of filmmaking showcasing some of the very best of an art form most of the audience thought was dead or had even forgotten about. It's a beautiful film that can both entertain children and speak to adults without insulting the intelligence of either. It might not get there in the most intellectually satisfying way, but there are some themes worth chewing over no matter how old you are. This is what movies have the power to do. They can take you places and show you incredible things, both real and imagined, in an almost tangible way. More than that, every film, no matter how painfully middle of the road or confoundingly obscure in either presentation or text, can give you something to ponder and discuss. On some level, everyone loves movies. At their best, they combine all of the arts to take you to places wondrous and painful. What you bring back from those places is going to depend on your own perspective, even if your own perspective is all you have to bring. This has been the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion. As always, I have been Gray, and if you like what you heard, you can leave a tip at our Ko-Fi page at ko-fi.com/notthepopularopinion. You can follow us on Twitter at @only_Gray, and don't forget our main page at notthepopularopinion.wordpress.com, where you'll find more great articles just like this. Thanks again for listening, and remember, if you're as good to others as you are to yourself, we might just make it through this mess. See ya.